Hey everyone, so you're here because you want to learn to bounce back after a fight with your significant other, right?
That's right. We're going to dive deep into how to recover from those arguments and come back even stronger.
Exactly. And let's face it, arguments happen in every relationship. It's what you do after the fight that really matters.
And one of the biggest takeaways from all our research was the importance of giving each other space right after a disagreement, before things escalate even further.
Oh, totally. Like hitting that pause button before things get out of hand.
Yeah, it's fascinating really how our biology comes into play here. When you're in the middle of an argument, your body's like pumping out all these stress
It's
hormones.
like that fight or flight response kicking in.
Right. So when you step away, you're actually giving those hormones a chance to settle down. You literally cool down.
It's not just about like getting some emotional distance.
No, it's physiological too.
You're actually giving your brain and body a chance to reset.
Exactly. And during that time, instead of just replaying the argument over and over in your head, our sources recommend doing something to de-stress.
So like what kinds of things?
Well, anything that works for you, really.
Going for a walk.
Yep, a walk in nature, or maybe just put on some music, get lost in a good book.
Anything to detach a little from the tension of the argument.
Exactly. Creating a buffer zone so you can regain your composure, and come back to the situation with a clear head.
Okay, I'm with you. So cool down, step away, create that space. But the sources also talk about like how important self-reflection is too.
Oh, absolutely. Taking time to really think about your role in the argument.
Yeah, and one quote that really stood out was being honest with yourself is the first step towards growth.
Because it's so easy to just blame the other person after a fight.
Totally.
But real change, it starts with looking inward.
So it's about asking yourself tough questions like
Like, what could I have done differently?
what were my triggers? Did I make things worse with my reactions?
Exactly. That kind of self-awareness is crucial. It helps you understand your own patterns, what sets you off.
It's like you become a detective of your own emotions.
Yes,
You're looking for those hidden clues to prevent future blowups.
right. And that introspection helps you move from a place of blame to a place of understanding, and that's how you grow.
Okay, so you've both cooled down, taken some time to reflect, you've had that internal dialogue. Now what?
Well, that's where communication comes in. The sources all emphasize the importance of clear, compassionate communication when you're ready to talk to your partner again.
But not just any communication, they talk about specific techniques, right?
Right, techniques that can really change how those post-argument conversations go. And one of the most effective is using I statements.
Okay, I've heard of those. They're supposed to help you express yourself without making the other person defensive, right?
Exactly. Instead of those you always or you never, accusations, I statements help you focus on your own feelings and needs.
So, for example, instead of saying, you never listen to me, you'd say,
You could say something like, I feel unheard when I don't get a chance to share my thoughts.
okay.
Because framing it that way, you're taking responsibility for your own experience without putting the blame on your partner.
It's like you're speaking the same language, but it's a different dialect.
Yeah, it's a dialect of understanding.
You're creating a safe space for open and honest dialogue.
Exactly. A space where both partners feel heard and respected.
You know, it reminds me of something called nonviolent communication.
NVC.
Yeah, NVC, it's all about expressing yourself without judgment or blame, really focusing on needs and feelings.
That's a great connection. NVC totally aligns with what these sources are talking about. It's a great framework for communicating even the most difficult emotions in a way that brings you closer together instead of pushing you apart.
So it's not just about the words we use, but the intention behind them.
Exactly. We're aiming for empathy and understanding, not winning an argument.
And that shift in perspective, that's key to repairing and strengthening the relationship after a disagreement. Now, speaking of understanding, we have to talk about active listening.
Oh, yes. That's a big one. It's the other half of the communication equation.
Because it's not enough to just express your own feelings.
Right. You have to really hear and absorb what your partner is saying, even if you don't agree with everything.
And that's tough. It's so easy to get caught up in your own head trying to get your point across.
It is.
You forget to really listen to the other perspective.
And active listening is more than just hearing the words, is paying attention to their body language, their tone of voice, the emotions they're expressing.
So, what are some ways to practice active listening?
Well, the sources suggest asking clarifying questions.
Like, can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. Or reflecting back what you've heard, making sure you understand their perspective before jumping in with your own.
It's about showing them you're really trying to see things from their point of view.
Right. And that validation can be so powerful.
It shows your partner that their feelings matter to you.
It's a way to rebuild trust and connection after that disconnect that happens during an argument.
It's like you're rebuilding that bridge.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about space, self-reflection, clear communication, and active listening. What about apologies?
Ah, yes. Apologies. The sources all agree that a genuine apology is so important, even if you don't think you were entirely at fault.
Because sometimes it's less about being right or wrong.
Right.
It's about acknowledging how your actions affected your partner.
Exactly. Because even if you didn't intend to hurt them, their feelings are still valid.
A sincere apology validates those feelings, right?
Yes, it shows a willingness to repair the relationship. It's like saying, I see you, I hear you, and I care about how my actions affected you.
And that can be incredibly healing, like you're acknowledging the wound and starting to mend it.
Exactly. It opens the door to forgiveness and reconciliation.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Space, self-reflection, communication, listening, apologies. But what about preventing future fights?
Ah, yes, that's where things get really interesting. The sources talk about being proactive, like taking steps to manage conflict before it even starts.
Okay, how do you do that?
Well, it starts with recognizing patterns in your arguments.
Like, what are the recurring themes?
Yeah, what are those triggers that always seem to set things off?
Okay, so let's say money conversations always lead to a fight.
Right. So maybe you agree to only have those conversations at a specific time when you're both calm and prepared.
So you're setting yourself up for success.
Exactly. Or maybe there's a certain phrase or a tone of voice that instantly puts you both on edge.
We all have them.
Well, you could create a code word, a signal that says, hey, this is getting heated, let's take a break.
It's like a safety valve.
Exactly. It lets you release the pressure before things explode.
It's about taking control of the situation before the situation controls you.
Yes. And that shift in mindset can be really empowering.
Instead of feeling like a victim of circumstance, you're taking charge of your relationship dynamic.
You're actively creating the kind of relationship you want.
And that brings us to another important point: patience. The sources really stress the importance of patience and understanding after a disagreement.
Because rebuilding trust and intimacy, that takes time.
We live in a world of instant gratification, but relationships don't work like that.
Right. It's more like tending a garden. You plant a seed and you have to nurture it.
You have to be patient.
Exactly. And just like a garden, relationships need different things at different times. Sometimes they need sunshine and encouragement, and other times they need space.
The key is to pay attention to the subtle cues
To really listen to what your partner needs.
and respond with love, understanding, and a commitment to growth.
That's beautifully put. And it's about showing up for each other, even when it's hard, even when you're tired, even when you'd rather just avoid the conversation.
It's about choosing love.
Yes, over and over again, even when it's tough.
So as we wrap up this part of the deep dive, I'm really struck by how these seemingly simple things, giving each other space, self-reflection, communication, active listening, apologizing, being patient, can be so profound for our relationships.
They really can. They're not quick fixes, but they're fundamental principles that can lead to more fulfilling and harmonious connections.
And it's not just about bouncing back after a fight. It's about using those experiences as stepping stones to create something even stronger and more meaningful.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that conflict isn't the enemy. It's an opportunity for growth and transformation.
You know, one thing that's really interesting is how we often get so focused on what we're arguing about.
Like the actual topic, yeah.
Yeah, the topic, the trigger. But these sources, they really emphasize the how.
How we communicate during those disagreements.
Exactly. Like, are we communicating in a way that helps or hurts? And one thing that came up a lot was the idea of setting ground rules.
Oh yeah, ground rules. It's almost like creating a code of conduct for when you disagree.
So you're both on the same page, right?
Right, exactly. It's about being proactive, setting those boundaries before things get out of hand.
But you wouldn't want to try to, like, negotiate the rules in the middle of a fight, right?
Oh, definitely not. The sources all say to discuss these ground rules when you're both calm and connected.
Makes sense. So what kind of ground rules are we talking about?
Well, every couple's different, so it really depends on what works for them.
Sure.
But the sources offer some good starting points, like one common one is agreeing to avoid personal attacks,
No name calling.
right? Even when things get heated.
Oh, yeah, it's so easy to say things you regret later when you're in the heat of the moment.
Totally. And having that ground rule in place, it can remind you to stay respectful even when you disagree.
Okay, that's a good one. What else?
Another popular one is establishing a timeout signal.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so if things start escalating, either one of you can call a timeout.
Take a break before it gets out of control.
Exactly. It's like hitting pause on a dream that's getting too intense. It gives you both a chance to, regroup, cool down, and then come back with a fresh perspective.
I love that. It's like a safety net for your relationship.
That's a great way to put it.
So those arguments don't just spiral out of control.
Exactly.
Now, what I thought was interesting was that the ground rules can actually change over time.
Oh, for sure. They should evolve with your relationship.
So it's not about creating like this rigid set of rules that you never deviate from.
No, not at all. It's more of a flexible framework.
Something that can support healthy communication no matter what.
Exactly. And the whole point is to create a space where you can work through disagreements respectfully, with empathy, and with that commitment to finding solutions together.
Okay, I love that. Now, something that really intrigued me was this idea of seeing disagreements not as battles to be won, but as opportunities for growth.
Oh, that's huge. It's like a total shift in perspective.
Instead of like one person wins, one person loses.
Yeah, it's more about seeing it as a chance to understand each other better.
So even if you don't agree with your partner, you can still be curious about their perspective,
Exactly. You're not trying to prove your point. You're more like a detective, you know?
trying to figure out what happened.
Exactly. Trying to figure out what are those underlying needs, those feelings that are driving the conflict.
So it's less about being right and more about understanding where the other person's coming from.
Right. And that shift, it can be so transformative. It takes you from a place of judgment and blame to a place of curiosity and compassion.
It's like you turn those disagreements into a shared learning experience.
And that learning, it can really bring you closer together.
It reminds me of that Japanese art of kintsugi.
Where they repair broken pottery with gold, right?
Yes. Those cracks are seen as part of the object's history, its beauty.
It's a beautiful metaphor. It's like those scars that we get in our relationships, those moments of rupture and repair.
They make us stronger, more resilient.
Absolutely. It's about embracing all of it, the highs and lows, the joys and challenges, and realizing that it's all part of the journey.
So true. Now, one thing I think we often forget is that after a disagreement, we need to be patient.
Patience is key.
Because we sources really stress that rebuilding trust and intimacy doesn't happen overnight.
Oh, no, definitely not. We live in a world where everything's instant.
Right. But relationships don't work that way. They need nurturing. They need consistency.
You can't just rush the process.
It's like, back to the garden analogy, you can't just plant a seed and expect a flower to bloom right away.
Exactly. You have to be patient. And just like with a garden, a relationship needs different things at different times.
Sometimes it needs encouragement, sometimes it needs space.
Yeah, it's about paying attention, those subtle cues,
Listening to what your partner needs.
and responding with love, with understanding, with that commitment to growth.
You know, it's really about showing up for each other even when it's hard.
Even when you're exhausted, even when you would rather just avoid the conversation,
It's about making that choice over and over again.
choosing love, even in the face of adversity.
That's so well said. And it's in those choices, those small acts of love and commitment, that we build a foundation for a strong, lasting relationship.
A relationship that can weather any storm.
We've covered so much in this deep dive. It's amazing how much we can learn from just, really digging into these sources.
It's like we've been given a whole toolkit for navigating the ups and downs of relationships.
And for creating deeper, more meaningful connections with the people we love.
And the best part is, this is just the beginning. There's always more to learn, more ways to grow and evolve together.
So as we continue this deep dive, I want you to keep these insights in mind. Think about how you can apply them to your own life, your own relationships.
What small step can you take today to create more connection, more understanding, more resilience in your love life?
Because even the smallest gesture can make a big difference. Choose love, choose empathy, choose growth, and just watch your relationships flourish.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
One thing that really struck me going through all this research is this idea of not just like fixing things after a fight, but using those conflicts to actually strengthen your relationship.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Turning those clashes into like building blocks for something even stronger.
Exactly. And there's this concept, relational resilience, I think it's called. It's basically the idea that couples who can work through their disagreements, well, they actually end up closer than before.
Right. It's like working a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. The more you practice healthy conflict resolution, the more resilient your relationship becomes.
Makes me think of those couples you see who've been together like forever,
Yeah.
and they just have this incredible bond. I'm sure they've had their share of arguments,
Oh, definitely.
but they figured out how to turn those challenges into opportunities to grow,
They've built up that relationship toolbox, I guess you could call it.
filled with all the right tools, yeah.
Communication skills, empathy, that commitment to working through things together.
And that's something anyone can learn, no matter where they are in their relationship.
Absolutely.
It's about recognizing that, okay, conflict's going to happen, but it doesn't have to tear you apart.
The key is to approach those disagreements with a growth mindset. See them as chances to learn more about each other, to understand each other's needs.
And to ultimately strengthen your bond.
Exactly.
And the sources actually offer some really concrete tips for doing just that. One that stuck with me was this idea of repair attempts.
Oh, yeah, repair time.
It's like noticing that things are going off the rails and then trying to steer the conversation back in a healthier direction.
Like hitting a reset button.
Yeah, before it's too late. And it could be something super simple like, hey, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed right now. Can we maybe take a break and come back to this later?
Or sometimes it's about injecting a little humor, or expressing appreciation for your partner, even if you're in the middle of disagreeing.
Yeah, just changing the energy.
Ex-
Sometimes it's about just owning your part in the conflict, like saying, I realize I haven't been listening very well. Can you explain that again?
It takes courage to do that,
It
but it
does.
can be so powerful. It really helps to de-escalate the tension, and it creates more space for empathy.
And it shows your partner you're willing to learn and grow.
Exactly, that you're not afraid to admit when you're wrong and you want to make things right.
Wow, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive. From giving each other space to self-reflection, communication, active listening, apologies, ground rules, even this idea of relational resilience.
That's been what a journey.
And it's incredible how much we can learn from just, taking the time to really dig into these sources.
And remember, this is just the start. Relationships, they're a lifelong journey of discovery.
There's always more to learn, more to explore, and more ways to connect even more deeply with the people we love.
So as we wrap things up, I want to leave you with this. How can you take what we've talked about and put it into action in your own relationships?
Yeah, what's one small step, just one, that you can take today to create more connection, more understanding, more resilience in your own love life?
Because even the tiniest gesture can have a huge ripple effect.
So choose love, choose empathy, choose growth, and watch your relationships blossom. That's it for this deep dive, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
And until next time, keep those conversations flowing, keep learning, and keep loving.